Hi, and welcome along to AFTV News Daily. Good evening. Welcome along to the show tonight. I hope you guys have had yourself a great day. And of course, we've had some football to watch, something that we haven't seen now for a couple of months. Football returning today in the Bundesliga over there in Germany. And I must say, I watched one of the games today. Borussia Dortmund versus Schalke. The big derby, which Borussia Dortmund won by 4-0. And honestly, I enjoyed it. It was good to be back watching football. Now, I'm joined today by a good friend of mine from over there in Germany, and that is Max, who's a big Borussia Dortmund fan from Borussia Myth. Max, you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
How you doing, Max? How's things?
Doing pretty well, managing. Thanks for having me on, of course. I hope everything's well with you as well.
Good. Long time no talk. Of course, many people remember you, Max, from when we did that video when we went over to Borussia Dortmund and we stood on the yellow wall and stuff like that. Yeah. We were invited over there by you, and I'm very grateful for that. I was watching that video actually the other day, and we had a lot of fun there on the yellow wall at Dortmund. But of course, no yellow wall today.
No.
Local derby, your equivalent to Arsenal, Tottenham, Borussia Mönchengladbach. I keep saying that, Borussia Mönchengladbach. Borussia Dortmund versus Schalke. Huge derby. What did you make of it? I mean, first of all, tell us what the atmosphere would normally be like at a derby like that, because you're there every week. What would it be like?
Yeah, well, I mean, normally it's the pinnacle of football for us. We always say there's two trophies basically besides the league and then the cup. You also have the derbies, and winning those is extremely important. We're two cities with very similar working class backgrounds, sort of in this steel and coal history, and there's just a lot of historical, deep-rooted dislike, animosity between the two teams. So these games are always extremely special, and even though the sporting success of the two teams has always varied in recent years, the historical sort of results between the teams is extremely balanced. Like, we basically have the same amount of wins as each other. So it's a game that no matter what the form is, everyone's up for it. Last season we were basically in the hunt for the league title, and Schalke were near the relegation places, and they came to our ground and they still won. So obviously we wanted revenge for that. So it really would have been a huge game under normal circumstances.
Yeah, and to see it played behind closed doors, obviously your stadium there is always packed, 80,000 fans, right? And it must have been weird for you watching that game, seeing it with no fans there.
Yeah, I mean, even going into it, we're always saying it's not a real derby. Without that sort of build up with the fans and that atmosphere, it's just not a real derby. And that's sort of what derbies are sort of built off of, that real, just intense atmosphere. And especially when you're a fan that watches the games in stadium, going from being in the stadium and really living it to not just watching it on TV, but watching it on TV without any atmosphere is just a completely different experience. And it's hard to get up for it the same way you would if it was a real derby, so to say.
Yeah, you were saying to me off air that there were some fans. I mean, obviously that wasn't the only game in the Bundesliga today. Quite a lot of games returned today. But you were saying that there's some fans that were boycotting the games. And when we say boycotting, obviously that means no fans was able to go, but boycotting it, that they didn't even watch it on TV. Why was that?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, about like a month ago, a lot of fan bases made their opinions pretty clear that they're not happy about the Bundesliga restarting. It feels too soon. It doesn't feel safe. And for another reason, it just, without fans, I mean, football is built off of the fans. So when you don't have fans, it's not really a point to it. But you have some instances where some people are either doing strict or maybe informal boycotts, so to say. I know a couple people from Freiburg, and they aren't watching the game they didn't watch their game against Leipzig because they just feel that it's socially unresponsible to be playing these games using all these testing for a lot of these players. And I guess, look, I understand that at some point life has to go back to normal. We can't stay in lockdown forever, and people like watching football. It is a form of entertainment in this lockdown, but at the same time, it does feel a little bit soon. And the big issue is that the reason these games are being played is not really because there's this need for these competitive games to happen and for the league to play out, but rather it's happening because of this plague in football, this over-reliance on TV money and on marketing. So really, more than these games being played because we want to see competitive football matches, these games are being played because of this over-reliance on TV money. And it almost feels like the results and what happens in these games is just going through the motions, and it doesn't really matter. Everything's just happening just so they can get that TV money and then just move on with it. So it just doesn't feel authentic.
Has it been affecting the clubs, obviously money-wise over there? I mean, you've had clubs over here, really hit hard financially.
Yeah.
Is it the same over there in Germany?
Yeah, definitely. And that's another problem with it. What this is doing is really exposing the problems with modern football. Obviously, in BVB, we sort of have the financial infrastructure at this time to sort of survive it. So does a team like Bayern Munich. But you have a lot of teams that really can't survive it that well. So in a way, they really do need this football. But on the other hand, you have to say it's like the reason these other teams can't survive it is because of this messed up infrastructure we have in the first place, where there's just disproportionate TV money being distributed. You have, lower league teams or lower table teams not really getting their fair share of money. And then you have teams like Leipzig and Hoffenheim that can survive it because they've been able to sort of do a form of financial doping. So, yeah, all of these sort of issues that have been building up in German football and in football in general for the past 10 years, even longer, are really being exposed. And it's sort of a culmination more than anything.
Yeah, we know all about those problems over here, trust me. Back on the game, though, it was a great result for you guys. 4-0 win over Schalke, and everybody's talking about Haaland. He's the guy, he scored that first goal. The first goal was a brilliant goal, by the way. Torgan Hazard with the assist. There's a great little flick before that, and it was a thing of beauty, that first goal. And Haaland with a fantastic finish. And this kid, he's on fire at the moment, isn't he? Yeah,
I mean, it's incredible. He really fits Dortmund well. I know he came from a Red Bull club, so it's a little bit weird at first, but in terms of just what he brings on the pitch, it really identifies with, I guess, what we like to see in a player in Dortmund. He has that, you can just see that drive in him, that desire to always be involved, to always work hard. And he has this almost very charming combination of arrogance and humbleness that really is just we like over here. So yeah, he's been spectacular, and I'm really happy to have him at the club.
Yeah, looking a great 6 foot. Was he 6'5"?
Yeah, around I think 6'4". So he's really for his height, he's really fast and has decent control. He's very good at getting. He's not just a poacher. He really does get involved in the build-up play. He's able to use his robustness to really open up space and really help some of the other players around him.
Yeah, and that other guy, Guerrero, he looked a quality player as well. We got someone here, actually, Arsenal 14, if I can get his chat up here. But he's saying the same thing. Guerrero looks class.
Yeah, no, he's been putting in a shift. I mean, before this virus happened, he was definitely one of our top 3 players of the season. He's really gone under the radar in Europe. I think a lot of the reason is it was hard to find a position for him, and he also had a lot of fitness issues. His natural position is almost more of a left wing back, but we don't play with a 3 or five at the back all the time. So sometimes, especially like last season, he was playing actually as a left winger, where he did a really good job, but he's not as much of a ball carrier as someone like Hazard. So he's more good at sort of overlapping and those kind of things you associate with more of a fullback. So now that he's getting to play more in his natural position, he's really starting to shine, and he's just showing just that all-round ability he has. Yeah.
And Hazard, which of course Torgan Hazard, which is Eden Hazard's brother, he looked quality as well. I mean, he looked quality. Really good player, as I said, great assist. That Brandt looked good as well. You got some good players there again. Of course, who only came on for a little bit, but again, I mean, how good's Sancho been this season for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, Sancho's been unplayable. I mean, he has the most goals and assists out of everyone in the team. What's crazy for him is for all of the sort of flashy dribbling he has, what I think a lot of people don't realize is his end product is really good. I think with these younger players, you don't associate them with a good end product. You sort of think of them overplaying it, which he does sometimes overplay things, but he's extremely clinical and actually very good in the decision making in that final third. So he's just incredible.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about Man United for him, haven't there?
Yeah, it's a little annoying. We'll see how it plays out. Obviously, either this coronavirus has shaken up the landscape of football transfers. You don't know if clubs are going to be able to afford him right now, because we're sort of in a position where we have, from selling previous players like Pulisic, Dembele, we can afford to sort of hold on to him. And then also at the same time, there's sort of a narrative that he's like desperate to leave the club. I don't necessarily get that sense. He seems quite happy here. He seems, at least in contrast to players like Dembele, a bit more down to earth. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him stay for at least another season. I mean, after that, he's definitely going to move on. But yeah.
I'll tell you what, you've got a lot of assets there, a bit like unlike Arsenal when we were talking about Arsenal over the past couple of days, over the past few years, not having assets. When I think about it, you sold Dembele, that was about over 100 million. You sold Aubameyang to us. Haaland's going to be worth about 200 million. You've got Sancho. I mean, the scouting's really working out well there at Dortmund, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's doing really well. And even on our youth ranks, it sort of lines up nicely, because if, let's say, Haaland leaves in 2 years or so, by that time, we have I'm sure you've heard of Moukoko from the youth academy, and he's just breaking all sorts of records for goals in the under 19s, under 17s in Germany. So he's a future star. So we sort of have a nice sort of line of talent coming through.
Listen, Max, lots and lots of comments coming through. Let's get into a few of those. Right. Kingsley Opera said the celebrations felt weird though. The social distancing celebrations. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it was so weird. For me, it doesn't really make sense, because you have a lot of 50-50 challenges going on regardless. It's not like players aren't touching each other to begin with. And you also have the fact that if this sort of system that the Bundesliga is implementing supposedly works with all of their testing, if that works, then they should be good to go. If they're on the pitch, that means they didn't test positive, which means it should be fine for them to be maybe not doing as much social distancing. So I don't understand why it has to happen in the celebrations if this system is as good as they claim it is.
By the way, I did love the celebrations at the end where, after the game, your players always go over to the yellow wall and celebrate with the fans. They still did that, even though the fans weren't there. They still did that. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, pretty tongue in cheek, but yeah, I guess it was a nice little gesture.
Yeah. This Van Gunner says Brandt looks very good, calm on the ball, and provided a couple of assists today. Arsenal should look for him.
Yeah, I agree with everything except the last sentence. He's probably he's been the biggest signing for us, and like, well, I guess Haaland came very shortly after. So, but I mean, typically is the case for Dortmund when we sign young players, they're normally fairly unknown by the time we sign him. Well, Brandt was already fairly well known in Germany. A lot of clubs were after him, so it was a huge deal when we were able to convince him to sign for us, because that's a really big step in the right direction. Because the idea is that long term we don't want to become the club that gets players like Sancho before they turn pro, give them their debuts, and then sell them 3 years later. The idea is we want to get to a position where we're the best talents in the world that are already fairly established, like Haaland and Brandt, come to us, and then Haaland, we probably won't be able to hold on to him for super long, but with someone like Brandt, the idea is he could become a long-term Royce replacement and maybe stay at the club for years to come and really establish a legacy here.
Okay. As I said, lots of comments coming in. Ashir says, "What do you Dortmund guys think of my man Aubameyang?"
Yeah, so most people who follow me on Twitter already know I'm not a fan of his anymore. Yeah, I feel like the less I say, the better. You guys are all Arsenal fans. Look, I understand why
you fell out of love with him.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to begrudge and hold it against an Arsenal fan for liking him. I mean, if I was an Arsenal fan, I'm sure I'd like him too. But a lot of people, what I see happen often is that people say like, oh, there's these rumors that Aubameyang was bad for the dressing room in Dortmund, but look how he is at Arsenal. That's not true. Look, at the end of the day, I didn't really like his conduct towards the end of his time at Dortmund.
Yeah.
So I think we have good reason not to like him, but at the same time, I think Arsenal fans have good reason to like him. So it's just one of those things.
Okay. Mr. Rotten says, Robbie, do you reckon Haaland will ever reach Messi, Ronaldo's level? Think he really reminds him of Zlatan. And I'll tell you what, looking at him today, and I was chatting to my brother about this, and I was saying that I think looking at Haaland and Mbappe, those two look like they could be the players that are going to take over the mantle from Ronaldo and Messi as they start to get older.
Yeah, I think Messi's pretty untouchable. I don't think so. I'm not sure we'll ever see another Messi. But yeah, Haaland definitely has that sort of a play style similar to Zlatan, and I think he can reach similar, if not further heights than him. And I think you have to include Sancho in that conversation too. Obviously, with Haaland, the thing is he's a proper striker, and these days you don't really see that many. You see a lot of talented young midfielders or wingers, but you don't see a lot of big young strikers. So it's a really big deal about Haaland. But I mean, Sancho in his own right is extremely talented, and I think he has those capabilities as well.
Okay. Wayne Spooney says, how much do you hate Schalke? And is the Riviera derby as big as the North London derby in terms of hatred?
Look, I'm going to say it's a bigger one, at least in my perspective. I mean, it's hard to say because I'm not an Arsenal fan, so I don't live your derby the way you guys do. But I mean, from my experience, hate's a strong word, but that's basically what it is. It's very, very a lot of animosity between the two clubs, as I described earlier. There's just a lot of history behind it, and some of that history again with it goes into sort of the economies of the cities as well. So it sort of almost goes beyond football to an extent. So yeah, it's a very, very strong rivalry.
Duff says Sancho not playing proves how valuable he is. Well, he did actually come on, didn't he? And then they've got this one. Arnav, he says, Max, please don't say that Dortmund wants Saka. Of course, Borussia Dortmund have been linked with Saka at Arsenal, who's just had a great season. Is there any truth in that, do you think?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I haven't heard too much from it or anything that would make me as an Arsenal fan be worried. He's a left back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty with Guerrero, I think we're pretty set. So I don't know if that's necessarily a pressing need right now. So I wouldn't be too worried, but I'm not in ITK, as they say.
Real OG said Brandt is similar to Özil but works harder.
I'm not sure if I would say he's exactly similar to Özil, because I think Özil is more of a traditional number 10. He's a little bit higher up the pitch. They both have that sort of flair, but Brandt, he almost plays this almost number 8-10 hybrid role, where he sort of drops deep and sort of helps with the build-up play. He's good at sort of switching the play as well a little bit and really contributing to the build-up play from the beginning and not just the final ball. But they are similar in terms of that directness they sometimes are capable of bringing and that flair they have. So
yeah. Camille says, Robbie wanted your opinion. If the Premier League is resumed, if one player gets coronavirus, the team has to be quarantined 14 days and the opposing team. If this happens to more teams, how long can we drag on the season? And would it be easier to just void it? Well, I reckon if that started happening a lot, you definitely would have to consider voiding it or not continuing on with it. Wasn't there this, because there were some players at Cologne, weren't there, Max, that tested positive, wasn't there? And they've had to go into ISO. Is it Cologne or there was one team?
Yeah, it's Cologne. I think there's 3 players. You have all these weird situations where like Augsburg's coach went to buy toothpaste from the market, so he broke this like mandatory pre-match 7-day quarantine. So he's not allowed to coach the team. So you have a lot of these weird rules that sort of disrupt I almost want to say consistency of the league.
Yeah. Alexander says, Max, do you miss Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan, and Socrates at Dortmund? Schalke or Bayern, did you like Rosicky when he played for Dortmund? And then he says Premier League. He's also a lot of questions there. He's getting them right. He says Premier League or Bundesliga, Aubameyang or Haaland, and why do your fans sing "You'll Never Walk Alone"? So that's about. He's crammed about 10 questions into there. Yeah. First of all, do you miss any of them? Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan, Socrates.
So I had Mkhitaryan. I miss a little bit because he was he was in. A lot of people don't realize how good he was. Really good that last season at Dortmund. His first few seasons he wasn't that good, but that last one he was really good because he was a real confidence player, and he finally got that confidence. Yeah. And then right when he sort of hit his stride, then he left, and obviously he made a wrong decision going to a Mourinho team, which obviously he never really got that confidence back. Schalke, Bayern München. Look, from a competitive standpoint, I really don't like Bayern Munich, but I do have actually a decent amount of respect for their fans, at least some of the match-going fans. I've actually earned my respect, especially in the past year or two.
Yeah.
Rosicky, I'm a huge fan of Rosicky. I mean, you have to remember, I was probably, when he played for us, I was 10, 12, around that age. So obviously he really captured my imagination. So he's, one of the first football kits I got was of Rosicky.
Bundesliga.
Yeah, well, I guess Bundesliga more so. But even then, I'm not the biggest fan of obviously, I like the Bundesliga because it's better than the Premier League in terms of what sort of rights fans have and how they're treated.
Yeah.
But overall, if you ignore the fact that Dortmund plays in the Bundesliga, I would say, not to sound like a hipster, but my favorite's sort of the non-league grassroots competitions in Germany.
Okay. Aubameyang and Haaland, and why do your fans sing "You'll Never Walk Alone"?
So, I mean, obviously I like Haaland better because he plays for us now. I think he's probably got a higher ceiling. Not to sound... Just to be honest, I mean, he's probably got a higher ceiling as well. And why do our fans sing "You'll Never Walk Alone"? To be honest, I don't really know. I think it's kind of a marketing gimmick. I'm not a fan of it. We've got some club songs that I think identify with the club more, and at least like, I don't know, when they say you'll never walk alone, everyone puts the scarves up. I don't even put my scarf up at this point. I'm just like, it just doesn't feel real. Like a lot of you hear all these other Germans singing in bad English, "You'll never walk alone," when they don't even really know the words. It just feels like it's a fake sort of marketing gimmick to an extent. It's not as authentic as it is at Celtic or even Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know.
David Orchard says, loved it when Munich smashed Tottenham. Ha ha ha, he says. Right. And actually, I wanted to ask you about a few players, right? Because we're obviously, even though it's not transfer season at the moment, because there's no football on at the moment, we're getting linked with lots of players over there in Germany. And I wanted to get your opinions on them, because you watch these guys week in, week out. We watch little bits of them and hear a lot about them. And so I wanted to get your views on them. First of all, we start with Upamecano at RB Leipzig. Lots of teams have been looking at him. Arsenal been interested in him for a while. What's he like? Is he a good player?
See, he's very athletic, very strong and fast, but I'm not exactly sure if he's what Arsenal needs right now, because he does sort of have that sort of error-prone side to him that you sort of see in. I think you just play with Luiz and Mustafi right now, right? Yeah, I think I don't know. This might be a bit of a controversial opinion, because I know he's fairly highly rated, especially outside of Germany. But I'm not super hot on him compared to some other players, even from Leipzig.
So 50 million. Do you think he's worth that? That's what a lot of the quoting is for him.
It's hard to tell. I mean, 50 million. When you look at the inflation of prices in football 6 months ago, it's like, maybe it's not the biggest risk in the world. But, you know, if this coronavirus really affects the transfer market and you can only spend 50 million to begin with or less, I don't know if that would be
okay. So
if I would invest everything.
A bit error-prone for you, you're saying?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, a lot of these sort of defensive talents in the Bundesliga that everyone's hot on, a lot of them have this problems with being error-prone. But I mean, you can see it. Look, you can see them evolve to an extent. I mean, Soyuncu, who plays for Leicester now, I think I've heard good things about him.
Yeah, he's played
well. But when he played for Freiburg, he was very error-prone in his own right. He wasn't. So it's like, you never know how they'll grow in a different way.
Well, all right, I'll give you another one. Evan Ndicka, who's plays at Frankfurt. He's another one who's been linked with Arsenal. 21-year-old. Linked with a move to Arsenal for around about 20 to 25 million euros. What's he like?
I think he's. Yeah, I think he could be a good investment at that price. I think he'd be good. I'm not an expert on him. I'll just to be completely honest, but from what I have seen, I think he's quite good and would be quite good for Arsenal. Okay,
what about Corentin Tolisso at Bayern Munich?
Yeah, well, he's been injured a lot. I don't know if you can get a good deal on him, I'm sure it wouldn't be a bad option to have. But again, it's like in this market where you've got limited money to spend, you have to be careful what you spend the money on, and you don't want to be signing a player who won't even be available for most of the time.
Yeah. All right. Dennis Zakaria, defensive midfielder at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He's been linked with us a few times. Swiss international, 23.
Yeah, he's very good. He's got that very all-round, very robust sort of that balance between the physicality, the athleticism, and also the technical ability. So he's very good. I think between him and Leinert from Leipzig, those would be some very good options, because I think Arsenal, I think you guys are sort of in the need for someone in that position that maybe is
forever.
a little bit more mobile than someone like Xhaka. And,
Jonathan Tah, centre back at Bayer Leverkusen.
I put him. sort of in that position of that sort of that young defensive talent who never has really seemed to progress beyond those mistakes. Like he's been around for a couple years now, and it just seems like that error-prone side to him hasn't really gone away. So I don't know if he'd be worth it. I think he's a little bit overrated, to be honest.
Got quite a few people in the comments here asking about Kai Havertz, also of Leverkusen.
Yeah, man, he's one of the best actual German talents to come out of Germany in a long time. He's probably a little bit more similar to Özil in terms of he's a bit more of a true 10 where he plays a little bit higher up the pitch, but he's got sort of a ton of elegance about him. Last season he was incredible. You could make the argument that he was even better than Sancho last season, although I would say I would give Sancho the slight edge. But they're both really, really gifted technical players. And now this season, the first half of the season, he didn't perform that well after Brandt left, who he had a good partnership with. And a lot of people were starting to say, okay, maybe he's overhyped, maybe he's not worth the money. But before the lockdown, he really regained form and was showing that he's really, really a top player. So I think he'd be worth a big money transfer. Okay,
there's Los Beebs. He says Timo Werner. He's asking about. Well, again, another guy who's been linked more to Liverpool. I mean, was getting linked to Arsenal at first, but I think more Liverpool he's getting linked to constantly. What's he? Been scoring goals, but Werner.
Yeah, yeah. Look, he's probably the most. I don't know how familiar Premier League fans are with this, but he's probably the most disliked player in Germany in a long time. He's just
why?
He has this sort of arrogance and just unawareness that just makes him really dislikable. He plays for Leipzig too, and he's sort of the symbol of Leipzig, who are sort of Leipzig in their own right as a construct, are sort of the symbol of what's wrong with German football these days. So he's very disliked, and I think, look, at the end of the day, he's very athletic. He's a very good presser, good dribbler. His finishing, it's not as clinical, I think, as people might think. But by the way, on that topic, I gotta say, the way Liverpool fans obsess over him, it's like, what I don't get is, look, I do like Liverpool to an extent because of Klopp, but what I don't get is you have all these Liverpool fans that they sort of talk about how they're against like Manchester City and all of this money in football, and they kind of are sort of similar to German clubs in that they like this sort of more pure form of football, but at the same time they have no problem supporting Leipzig right now just because Timo Werner plays for them. I don't get that.
No, nobody. You guys over in Germany, you don't like Leipzig, do you? You just don't like RB Leipzig at all, do you?
No, not at all.
Especially Dortmund fans. You had that banner that you guys pulled out, and that. I mean, there does seem to be a big hatred of Leipzig over there.
Yeah,
well, explain the reason why, because some people over here might not know why. But why is it that not just Dortmund, but it seems to be Dortmund in particular, but why is it that so many clubs hate RB Leipzig?
So basically, especially what we call the tradition clubs in Germany, that's sort of Dortmund, Schalke, Gladbach, these sort of really traditional working class clubs that really believe in the tradition of football. Them even more so than others are very much against Leipzig. And the idea is that they sort of represent this problem in football where instead of, like back in the day, 15 years ago, we had situations where, a team like Stuttgart could get promoted into the league, work their way up, win the league, then maybe make some bad choices and then get relegated again. And it was this real sort of balance of play where, teams were rewarded for their good in bad work and how they managed to, manage the resources that they fairly earned.
Yeah.
Now you have a team like Leipzig who, I guess more than anything, they circumvent the 50+1 rule. And the 50+1 rule is basically this idea that fans have to be the majority owner of clubs. So they sort of have this real connection to clubs. Meanwhile, you have Leipzig that sort of bypass this rule by buying a team very far down in the pyramid. And then what they do for their ownership is they have it so you can be a club member and sort of be a voting member the way I am for Dortmund or any other fan of a German football club is for their club. You can do that for Leipzig, but you have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for that membership. So the people who are members is a very small group of investors and people who work for the club or work for Red Bull. So they're really just finding a loophole in the system and exploiting it and being able to, take advantage of this weird connection they have with Salzburg to get good players and being able to not run on an actual, not being able to sort of inject money into the club that they didn't fairly earn. And it's just the existence of the club isn't for the tradition of the city or the tradition of the football clubs, these grassroots organizations like you see. I mean, there is two traditional clubs in Leipzig, Lokomotiv Leipzig and Chemie Leipzig. They both play in lower leagues, and they're sort of more real football clubs. And you have this energy coming over as part of their marketing campaign and really taking away this spot in the league and in European competition from clubs that, that worked their way into the league.
Yeah, welcome to our world in the Premier League, because that's practically that's like literally every club at the top in the Premier League is run in that sort of model where it's just lots of money just being thrown at it. And we're about to have a Newcastle being bought by Saudi billionaires, so that's going to be another one. So, but obviously, yeah, I know you guys don't like that at all over there in Germany.
Yeah, and like I said, one of the problems I see in England is there's almost this acceptance of it. Like I see a lot of people moaning about it, like sort of complain about this, like the rise of Manchester City and stuff, but there never was really a organized, protest against it. And I know I always get English fans always ask me like, isn't it a bit extreme to like boycott all away games to Leipzig and not travel to it or do all of this stuff? But the idea is like, it may seem a bit extreme, but these really strong principles and our the way we sort of take these principles more sort of this identification to the club and these principles are more important than the sporting success that happens on the pitch.
But they are growing, aren't they, Leipzig? They are starting to grow as a club, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and it's a problem. But I'm not gonna ever be in a point where I just sort of accept it.
Yeah.
Even if it makes me stubborn or maybe makes me old school, I'm not. Even if it's just if they're part of the league and there's nothing we can really do about it, out of principle, I'm still not going to. I'm still not going to ever like go to a Leipzig game just because I think these principles are really important for sort of maintaining this fan culture that we have, this rich fan culture that transcends the sport itself. Like I said, I go to a bunch of games to our amateur team, our under 23s, and if ever it gets to a point where we just completely lose this fan culture, I'd rather just watch the under 23 games, even if it's of a lesser quality, because the quality isn't everything. It's the culture around football that makes it so special.
Yeah, I love that. Carlitos says, ask about Tobido. So he said to ask you about Tobido.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I think I cut out for a second.
So, no, the last guy said to ask about Tobido.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, didn't he say something to Haaland during the game?
Oh, did he?
I think he said something like, I don't know, he because there's no crowd, you can hear sometimes what they're saying. So he, like, I think minutes before Haaland scored that goal, he was talking trash to him or something.
Okay.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Okay. Sean Turner says, I think this guy must be a Man United fan, because he says, can't wait to see Sancho in that famous number 7 shirt. But what you're saying, Max, you're saying that he very well might stay.
Yeah, look, I mean, at least for another season. Look, he's not going to retire at Dortmund. But Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that he'll stay for another season.
Okay, Ben Antonio says, "Hi Max, I thought Dahoud was very good today, and I've always rated him. But why does he not play often?"
Yeah, so that's a very interesting one. I also like Dahoud. There's this sort of expression that we say that people always say when they talk about Dahoud. He plays it somewhere between madness and genius. He can either just do the dumbest thing, or he can do something absolutely genius. He'll either do some like flick or turn that plays off perfectly and creates an attack out of nothing, or he'll just lose the ball in a dangerous position and just do something unnecessary. And I think that sort of inconsistency has kind of been why our trainer has been reluctant to play him. But I think part of that comes with the fact that he's not getting as much game time as he deserves, so he's not able to get that rhythm. So I'm hoping he gets a fair sort of chance at sort of getting that rhythm, because I do think he does have some skills to offer.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't the one I was looking for. This guy here, he says, Dortmund have hoovered up all the young, promising midfielders over the last few years. So, and this guy says, his name's called Tejas. He says, "Hi Max, do you think Lucien Favre will be sacked if BVB fail to achieve their targets this season?" Of course, your manager, you are second in the league at the moment, but you have spent and stuff like that. With expectations are high. Do you think he could be sacked if they don't? I mean, the only trophy you can win now is the league, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a very complicated, I guess, answer to that question, because obviously last season he started off amazing. We kind of bottled the league, and people were starting to get a little bit frustrated with him. So even though he did all this great work to even put us in a position to challenge for the league, people were thinking, okay, maybe he's reached his ceiling and he can't take us further. So we gave him this season, and this season's sort of been up and down. And the idea was, okay, unless we win the league this season, we're not going to continue with him this following season. But now, because of this unprecedented situation, look, I don't know if it makes sense to sack him. One, because there's not a lot of trainers available. So for me, this sounds cruel, but the advantage of keeping on to him is we can justifiably sack him whenever. So if a manager becomes available, we can sack him and bring that new person in. But if let's just say we sack Favre in the summer and bring someone else in, and we'd have to bring in someone like Daniel Farke from Norwich, or someone like that who's maybe not proven enough in their own right. And the problem is, then we have to give this new manager a fair shot, even if they're not proven. So then if a manager, like a top manager, becomes available after that, then we kind of have to just stick with this whatever unproven option we appoint in the summer. So in my opinion, the best way to proceed is to keep Favre until we know for a fact that a better option is available. Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Belaz says, Robbie, ask him about Gnabry. Now, Gnabry, of course, who obviously was at Arsenal, left Arsenal, has gone to Germany, and he's just tearing it up over there, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of those few Bayern players that you kind of can't help but like a little bit, just because he's just comes across as fairly down to earth and a likable player. So obviously I don't like Bayern Munich, but yeah, I've got some respect for him as a player. There's a couple of players like that in Bayern, like Goretzka, too, even though he played for Schalke and Bayern. So in theory, I should really dislike him, but he really has that. He's a very authentic person. He sort of speaks out on maybe he's very aware of his privilege as a footballer. So you kind of get some players like that at Bayern who.
And he's been doing well, hasn't he?
Yeah. Gnabry's been really, really, really good.
Yeah. No Name says, who's the best Bundesliga striker, Lewandowski or Haaland?
Well, Lewandowski is just. I mean, I think he's the best striker in the world. So I don't know if he can be topped at the moment. I mean, he's got it all, really. Yeah, I mean, I've seen Lewandowski play for the club. He's I'd like to say Haaland, but it's hard to say Lewandowski is not the best striker in the league.
Okay. Daniel Nordland says, "Wow, Max, you're so well spoken. I could listen to you talk all night." And he's a Bayern fan.
I appreciate that, Daniel.
That's high praise from a Bayern fan as well. You know? So I can't imagine a Tottenham fan coming on here and saying, "Robbie, I could listen to you all night." No, we loads and loads of people are asking about players over in Germany. So keep them coming. And let me get this one. This is an Arsenal one. This is Mo Hassan. He says, "What do you think about Unai Emery's comments, Robbie? A bit salty and sour grapes." So Unai Emery, of course, who did an interview with The Guardian. He had some things to say about Ramsey leaving, saying that he didn't really want him to leave, and he left. He had some things to say about the fact that Ramsey got injured was one of the reasons why we didn't get into the top four last season. But also very damning on Ozil, where basically he accused him of having a lack of commitment and a lack of attitude. So, I mean, Max, Ozil, what do you guys make of Ozil over there in Germany? I know he fell out with the German national team and everything, but what do you make of you must see all the stuff that goes on. Recently, Ozil very controversially over here refused to take a pay cut when all the other teammates, well, all but three of the whole Arsenal squad agreed to take the pay cut. Have you guys been observing any of that over there in Germany?
Yeah, look, I'm an Ozil fan, especially when he was at Madrid. I used to really like watching him, and I've got sympathy for him in the situation. I agree that look, as far as when the situation when he left the national team, I mean, I was on his side, so to say. I mean, I'm not a fan of our national team at all, especially in recent years, because they sort of, they're run by the DFB, who obviously are responsible for a lot of these things happening in German football, which I don't agree with. So obviously, you can't separate the national team from the DFB. So obviously, as a result, I don't really care for the national team. And I agree with him about sort of the racial abuse he faces. Look, I think Germany is a good country when it comes to tolerance compared to maybe some other countries. That being said, there's still a long ways to go, and I think it's really good that we have these figures, people who have a really large platform and audience that sort of speak out on these issues. And I think it's admirable that, look, I'm sure in terms of the financial gain that you get from being an Adidas sponsor, playing for the German national team, being the face of the national team, there's a lot that you get with it. So there's not much for him to gain by sort of leaving the national team. I think he really did it out of, because he felt he was treated unfairly and he wanted to make a statement. And yeah, so I got respect to him for that.
Yeah. Okay. Psycho Trip says, Robbie, I can listen from a sports fan, and I know he's lying. I can tell by his having a Salah in there, so I know he's not a Spurs. Yeah. So stop trying to Vedant says, ask him about Goetz's potential move after being free this summer. Goetze, of course, he went back to you guys. Available on a free transfer. He was linked with Arsenal in January. Finished Goetze for you?
Yeah, he's got to be. Look, there's two ways I got to address the Goetze thing. Like, obviously, he had that whole metabolic disorder that sort of really stunted his career. Then obviously, I'm sure the move to Bayern on top of that didn't help. So a lot of culmination of things meant he lost a lot of his ability, particularly his athletic ability. His technical ability, to be fair to him, he's always kind of retained. So he's always had this great touch.
Yeah.
He's lost the sort of speed and agility to actually use that to sort of devastating effect in terms of beating players on the dribble. At the end of the day, him coming back to Dortmund was a bit of a failed experiment. He never really there were people that were excited when he came back to sort of, as corny as it sounds, almost re-fulfill the prophecy, his original prophecy of playing for Dortmund, you know. But at the end of the day, like, for me, what's happened to Götze, I used to really like him when he first came up at Dortmund, but he's just kind of turned into a bit of an unrelatable sort of footballer. Like, there's this section of Dortmund called Phoenixsee, where a lot of sort of wealthy people live. And his Instagram is just sort of filled with photos of him there and these really sort of cookie cutter captions. So he's sort of really, I don't know, I wouldn't say Dortmund fans really identify with him anymore. So I don't know if there's that many fans that are sad to see him go.
You guys are forgiving though. You took him back from Bayern. You took Mats Hummels back as well. Are you forgiving?
No, look, I'm kind of over Hummels being back. I'm sort of indifferent to it. But yeah, I don't really like him, to be honest. But I mean, if he can provide performances on the pitch, I guess I'll be tolerant of it. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Real OG says, how about Alphonso Davies, the Canadian wonder kid? He's at Bayern. Oh, God. Yeah. He absolutely tore Tottenham to shreds. He looks a player, he does.
He is incredible. I mean, he's the best player I've seen. I mean, come out of North America. I mean, to me, it's almost like unbelievable to see. I mean, this again, he's another one of those Bayern players where you kind of like, because they come across as sort of a more down to earth, likable person.
Yeah.
But I mean, his work rate is incredible. Like his athleticism, his work rate. I mean, and you have to remember, when he came up the youth ranks, he was supposed to be an attacking player, and he sort of impromptu was sort of asked to fill in a defensive role, and he just showed how eager he was to sort of learn the position, and wasn't selfish, was a team player, listened to his coach, and really developed into that position really, really well. So he's
sounds just like Saka, yeah. Where he's a left winger and filled in at left back and be absolutely amazing in that position. This guy Charles Racine says, "Hi Max, Dortmunder here. Just want to express my gratitude with Julian Brandt. His vision, versatility, and trickery. He'll be our best player soon."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I think I see him as sort of the next Marco Reus at our club in terms of having that quality and maybe longevity at the club. I see him as someone who's can really say for a while. And just a heads up, I got about 3 more minutes or so.
Okay. Adam says, Robbie, I can't see footballers should be scared of going back to play if it's safe to. People will be going back to work in the next few weeks. They can say the same. Footballers will be tested a lot, and obviously they're being tested. Max, listen, I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. And giving us a real insight into German football. And I think everybody watching the German league today sort of saw how it's going to work when we get to come back. It will be behind closed doors. It won't be the same, but it's better than nothing, I suppose, at this moment in time. But thank you very much, Max.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun catching up with you and talking football.
Yeah, let's talk again soon, man. Take care.
Sounds good. All right, see you around.
That's Max there, and good friend of mine, big Borussia Dortmund fan, season ticket holder there. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Great insight. And thanks for watching the show tonight. We're going to be back in the morning with the News Daily, the early edition. But have yourself a great night. And football is back.